Hillary and I have been together for nearly 4 years. She moved to the city during our junior year of high school and we quickly became fast friends. I have never connected with someone as deeply as I did with her. We said our I love yous on the second day we spent together. The first 2 years were the 2 most incredible years of my life. We went on to university together. We literally spent almost every single day together. Hillary was everything I could have ever asked for and I thought she was the one. I felt lucky to have someone like her. The first 2 years she would always bring up marriage and kids and things like that. I was all in. We knew we wanted to go to the same college. She was going to take a teaching degree and I was going to tackle engineering. But time came for me to take my diploma exam and I didn't get the grade I needed in order to get into engineering. Then things sort of just changed for me. It's like my whole future collapsed. I watched as my dreams of becoming an engineer shattered before my eyes. The disappointment and frustration weighed heavily on me, casting a dark shadow over everything. As my friends celebrated their successes and made plans for the future, I felt like I was standing still, frozen in time. Hillary noticed the change in me, the way I retreated into myself and became distant. At first, she tried to cheer me up, reminding me that there were other paths to take, other dreams to pursue. But I couldn't shake off the sense of failure that clung to me like a heavy cloak. I felt like a failure. From there, a couple of buddies of mine urged me to go into geological sciences. It was something that I had an interest in but never really thought of how I could make a career out of it as it was always just a hobby. But I decided to give it a shot. The only catch was the college that the program was in a different city altogether. And about a 12-hour drive from the college that Hillary had been accepted to for her teaching degree. I applied to the program without telling her. Yeah, I know. Bad boyfriend. But I knew that she'd try to talk me out of it and I just had already felt low for not getting into the engineering program that I had planned on. I ended up getting accepted into the program. But the excitement of getting accepted quickly turned to dread because I still hadn't told her of what my new plan was. How could I be so selfish to choose my own path over Hillary's and potentially risk our relationship in the process? I ended up sitting her down and mustering up the courage to break the news to her. She didn't say much, just nodded as if processing the information. Then she said that she's already been accepted to the college we had originally planned to go together and she wasn't going to walk away from that. I encouraged her not to. She was mad, upset, disappointed. All of it. But she said that she didn't want to hold me back. I said that we would talk, text, video chat every day if we needed. I said I'd come back for all of the big holidays and for the fall and spring breaks. But when I was in school, the long distance combined with school and work started to put a serious strain on me and I knew it had put a strain on our relationship soon enough. In hindsight, it may have been foolish, but I made the decision to prioritize her above all else. She became the most important thing in my life. I felt like an ass for leaving her and the biggest loser for moving away from all of my friends and family. I ended up doing really bad that year because I'd skip class just to video chat with her, I'd stay up late talking to her, and lose focus, skip out on assignments, and I ended up on academic probation. I considered dropping out but my family insisted I stick it out. I ended up being really depressed. She seemed to be flourishing and doing really well. She said she missed me, but she said that she wasn't going anywhere and that it was only temporary. She said we were doing this for our future. So that's what kept me going. She basically gave me some tough love and I sort of snapped out of it. There were weekends that she had said she planned to come out to see me, but then she'd back out last minute. She said an assignment came up where she wanted to spend the weekend studying and so I didn't want to take her away from that. I just looked at this more so as business. I had a job to do and she had a job to do. We were building our future together. I came back for Christmas and hardly saw her. I chalked it up to the fact that Christmas is a busy time of year and we both had family to see and visit and everyone sort of wanted a piece of me while I was finally in town, except for my own girlfriend. Then spring break came around. She kept telling me how excited she was to see me and all of the things she had planned, but then I came back and she said that she was super sick. I went to drop off some homemade soup and sandwiches one night, but it was a quick hi and bye. She didn't even kiss me on the lips because she said she didn't want to get me sick. I was bummed. When I went back to school, I worked my ass off trying to better myself so that I was going into my second year on the right foot. I ended up finding my groove and finally it was summer break and I came back home. Although I was unhappy and struggling with depression, I never let it show. I took responsibility for my emotions and tried my best to make her happy. Our once thriving relationship had changed, but I attributed it to a settling into a routine in the end of the honeymoon phase. Suddenly, she began expressing her strong opposition to having children, even though I had never brought up the topic and still didn't want kids. This was also when she casually mentioned that she could live without getting married, a warning sign that I overlooked. But despite these hints, I chose to ignore them. Suddenly I thought, okay, maybe I don't want to get married and maybe I didn't want to be a dad. I was willing to put all of that aside for her. During this time I came close to landing a dream job quite a few times but always came up just short, and each time I could sense her respect for me dwindling. It was an internship that would have gotten my foot in the door. I told myself to stop being irrational and paranoid and again ignored something that should have been a red flag. That brings us to our last year together. When we first started dating we had sex pretty much all the time, like we'd skip class to go and do the deed. We both have high sex drives and it was amazing. But this past year we had sex a grand total of 3 times. I mean, granted, I wasn't around, but still. While I was away, she talked about what she'd do to me when I got back as if she was going to jump my bones the first chance she got. But it wasn't like that at all. And each time it was her doing me a favor after I had basically begged her. Despite constantly asking, she always responded with "I don't feel attractive." However, I honored her wishes and remained by her side because my love for her was too strong. During this time my relationships with all my friends deteriorated a bit, mostly because I was struggling with being away, trying to balance school and maintain my relationship with her, and I was battling depression real bad. And during this time, I will say, she was working hard and really taking care of herself. She lost some weight and she was looking particularly delicious. She started regularly going to the gym and quickly lost a significant amount of weight. Physically, she was almost unrecognizable and her personality seemed to change as well. She became emotionally distant from me, no longer displaying the neediness and clinginess that characterized our relationship before. Even when she showed me affection, it felt forced and insincere. I tried talking to her about it multiple times, but she always reassured me that everything was fine. I convinced myself that I was overthinking things and that my insecurities were getting the best of me, thanks to reading too many similar stories on Reddit. Being around her became unbearable, yet I couldn't bring myself to end things in case it was all in my head. I desperately wanted concrete proof of what I was feeling. Well, one day I had enough and I told her that it doesn't even feel like we're in a relationship anymore. We got in this huge fight. I felt like I was talking to a stranger, someone I once knew so intimately but now couldn't recognize. Hillary said that it was all in my head and that everything was fine. She said she was just working hard towards our future and that I needed to trust her. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. It was as if a dark cloud had settled over our relationship, casting a shadow on everything we once had. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was slipping away from me. She said I just needed to focus on me and stay on track. She said everything was fine. Then she suggested that we go to Mexico for spring break. She said it would be a perfect place to let loose and just relax and spend some intimate time together. I quickly jumped at the idea and we both spent the night excited, invigorated, looking at all-inclusive packages. We eventually found one that worked for the both of us and we were going to meet each other there. Well, a few days before we were supposed to leave, she DRPS'd this bomb saying that she can't go anymore. Hillary told me she had to work on an important project and couldn't take the time off to go on the trip. I was disappointed. I sort of flipped out, but she got mad at me saying that she was doing this for us and that I needed to be more understanding. I said she was leaving me with this big bill now that should have been split between the two of us, and not only that, but this trip was supposed to save our relationship, that it didn't even feel like she was putting first anymore. Then she said that I was being unreasonable and selfish and that I didn't understand how hard she was working and that everything she was doing was for me and the relationship. I then backed off. I tried to understand the importance of her work and didn't want to pressure her into coming with me. But I couldn't help but feel like I had been sacrificing my own happiness and well-being for the sake of our relationship, only to be met with accusations of not being supportive enough. It felt like a slap in the face. She said that I should still go on the trip and that she will call me every night and we can video chat. She said that the trip would be good for me to cut back and relax and get my mind off of school. I ultimately went to Mexico by myself. On the nights that we were supposed to video chat, she'd say she had to turn in early, so we only talked for about 20 minutes at a time. Well, one night she said goodnight and we said our goodbyes, and then I'm scrolling through Instagram and I watch a mutual friend of ours story and she's at a bar taking shots and Hillary is with her. I'm like, maybe this is an old video and our friend is just posting this now. Then I go onto Messenger and it says that Hillary was active 30 minutes ago. Well, she said she was going to bed 2 hours ago. So what is she doing still up? Then I go onto Snapchat, but Hillary has turned off her live location. Usually she shares her location, but I've never really had to use it. Okay. Then I go back to Instagram and I message our friend and I ask what bar that is. She responds and says it's a certain bar and she sends a photo of a drink in her hand. So I know it's Liv. I know she's there right now and I know Hillary is there. I text Hillary and I say, I thought you were sleeping? Then I try to go back and see the story again, but our friend has deleted it. Well, now I'm fuming. Hillary doesn't respond. I try to go to sleep but I can't. It's still early and there's a bar down by the beach that's still open, so I get dressed and go down for some drinks. I end up meeting some people there and there's an attractive woman there who's pretty flirty with me, Heidi. We end up drinking together and she asks me to come back to her room. She rubs my leg. I put my hand down to sort of stop her from going any further and I say that I'm super flattered but that I'm seeing somebody. She apologizes, she says she didn't know and she totally respects that. We end up adding each other on Instagram and it being totally harmless, and I add a few more of the group of people there that she's with as well. We all end up hanging out a bit and I actually really enjoyed myself. I spent the rest of the vacation with that group. Anyways, she doesn't respond to my text and the next morning I send another and I sent. Then about 2 hours later she responds and she says, oh sorry, She went out with Trish, who is our mutual friend, and she says Trish needed to get out and asked me last minute. She said Trish needed a friend. I was like, why did you lie? She said she just didn't feel the need to text me because she thought I'd be sleeping. And then I say, why did she think I was sleeping? Because I'm here alone and you think I'm a loser? And she said, whoa, where did that come from? And I say I didn't go to bed either. I went to a bar myself that night and met some cool people. Then I guess there is a photo that I was tagged in and Heidi's arm was around me in the photo. But there was a group of us in it. So then she forwards me that photo an hour later and she says, cool people, huh? And I read it and don't respond. That night, I have a buddy of mine text me and tell me that she was at the bar with Trish and Hill and that Hill was seen with another guy. And I say, what? What guy? And then he sends me a text of Hill sitting on some random's lap. My buddy then sends another and it's of this guy kissing her neck. Then he sends another and they're dancing, but basically on top of each other. Well, then I'm in Mexico all by myself and find out my girlfriend is cheating on me. My buddy texts me and says that he's sorry. And then I'm like, don't be sorry. And I send a screenshot of the woman who tried to get with me the night before. Then he says, you know what I would do? And I did. I did know what my friend would do. So I went into Instagram and messaged Heidi and asked her out for dinner. We end up going for this lovely dinner and sitting at this poolside bar. We get to know each other and she asks me what happened to what I said earlier. And I said earlier? And she said, you're seeing somebody. And I said, yeah. Forget I ever said that. I then go on to tell her basically my life story and I show her those photos of Hill with some random guy. Heidi then says that her offer still stands. Did I take her up on that offer? Hell yeah, I did. She even grabbed my phone and took a selfie of her mouth on a certain part of my anatomy and I'll let you guess which one. Let's just say I came to Mexico to feel relaxed and to get my mind off of school and my mind was definitely not on school. Later that night, we put those pictures of Hill and her new guy up on my social stories and said Ms. Hillary is a cheater who will be teaching the next generations. Do you want her teaching your future kids? Then she texts me and says, how could you do this? What are you thinking? You're out of your mind. All that jazz. She said, how could you treat your girlfriend like this? I said, girlfriend? I'm single. I can do whatever I want in paradise. Then I sent her the photo of Heidi making me feel good and tell her I'm doing this for my future. Update 1. Quick update. I come back from Mexico and find out that Hill has an OnlyFans account. Another buddy of mine screenshot her account and sent it to me and it's definitely her. Guess she's been real busy since I've been away for school. I sent the screenshots to her family and friends and by this point I don't even care. Then it comes out that Hill wasn't even going to school. She dropped out in the first semester because she had failed some classes but had managed to pretend like she was going. She was actually just creating a following on OnlyFans. She took on this person A of Miss Hill update 2, back again. Hillary's actions had broader implications for her family's reputation and social standing within their community. C, her father was actually a man of pretty big importance and ended up losing some pretty big clients. Her father's reputation took a hit that even he couldn't recover from. They went through so much strain that her parents ended up getting divorced and her dad moved out of town. I'm not sure where he ended up, I never asked. But I talk to Hill's sisters still from time to time. I guess their mom isn't talking to Hill. She's not allowed home and she's been working at some Dollar Tree but her OnlyFans isn't active anymore. Hill and her family are totally disgraced. They've lost everything. I feel bad for her sister. Meanwhile I'm finishing up school and I feel like I'm in a really good place. I finally got my head out of my ass and met some new people here. It's starting to feel like home. And I even talked to Heidi a bit here and there and she's planning on coming out to see me next month. We're not putting any expectations in it. We're friends. She's cool and we're just having fun. For the first time in, well, ever, I don't regret moving here and doing something for myself. I guess not getting into engineering turned out to be one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. Life's weird. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Came home early from my exhausting job to surprise my wife and found a love letter she wrote to another man, so I told his wife about the months-long affair, then divorced her. I was married to my wife Lily in my mid-30s. She was 33 then and we were a basic family who had the bare minimum. No kids, which I was grateful for. She wanted a new kitchen and that meant one thing, longer hours at work for me, and barely enough time to be home when she got back from school. She was a school teacher, by the way. I thought getting her what she wanted was going to make her happier but it didn't. Instead, she would barely look at me while I tried conversing with her, and she answered with curt nods when I asked questions. It went on like this for weeks. I was coming back tired to my distant wife. One day at work, I began to sweat profusely even when it was less than 20 degrees outside. My coworker who happened to see me rub my eyes to clear my blurry vision insisted I go home. I had painkillers to help me get my head together before climbing into my truck and driving home. This was the first time in months that I was going home early. It was going to surprise Lily. I parked my truck out front when I realized she wasn't back yet. By the time I was heading for the door, I noticed there was mail in the box. I was never the one to check the mail because my wife got home before I did. But this mail got my attention. I grabbed it and checked who it was for. It was an address not too far away and within the city, with our return address, and the sender was Lily. It was natural to ignore the mail knowing she was always sending something like this. But then I found it weird that the recipient's address was still in this town, not too far from where I lived. My curiosity caught the best of me and I opened it up, especially because the envelope was pink and had faint cute hearts sprinkled on it. It wasn't anything you'd send a serious letter, and ailer bells in my head were already going off and the dizziness felt earlier at work washed away. My finger pulled at the print inside and my heart broke at what I saw. Nudes. They were nudes, her nudes. That wasn't all, there was a handwritten letter telling the recipient to enjoy. With my blood boiling and my head hot, I closed it up and studied the address again. Knowing the place was a few streets away, I climbed into my truck. I finally found the apartment, clean and freshly painted. I stayed in my truck watching to see if anyone was in when right at that moment a new car pulled up to the driveway. The man, who I guess is the owner, stepped out, and I followed with the mail in hand. The man turned to me in confusion. Pretending to be delivering a package, I handed the mail to him. And in 3 seconds, when he realized who it was from, his eyes widened. It surprised me how calm I was. No fist throwing, no tongue lashing, just a straight stare at the man in front of me. I noticed the woman on the other side of the door watching us curiously, his wife I suppose. Assuring him I wouldn't make a scene, I told him to come with me and he obliged with no hesitation, giving his wife the excuse of going to see a friend, and entered my truck. I stopped by a phone booth along the way and called Lily. She was back home and from the sound in the background, I could tell she was making her special tea. I gave her the news of an emergency and told her that she should meet me at her parents' house. Her instant response was expected and I hung up. Heading back to the car, I drove up to her parents' house without saying a word to the man having an affair with Lily. By the time I rounded up at her parents' house, Lily had just arrived. It wasn't subtle. Her reaction, her mouth fell open as she saw the man next to me. Her parents, who had just stepped outside, found us and were confused by what was going on. I told the man to hand the mail over to her parents and explain himself. It didn't take too long for my wife to start crying. She tried to explain but her sobs made it hard for her. The man she was having an affair with understood that the jig was up and explained that this had been going on for months. They had met at a parent-teacher meeting in school and he had shown interest in her, even knowing she was married. Lily never tried to turn him down. Instead, she bathed in his attention and made it something more. Her parents were stunned by the information. Lily was already clinging to my shirt crying, but I brushed her off. I couldn't believe that she would betray me like this. So I told her to stay with her parents. She started crying harder, begging me not to do this to our family. Her parents were extremely upset, asking me to reconsider, and trying to console their daughter. But I just left. I left the app with them too. I wonder what they did to him after I left because her dad was looking murderous. A few days later, I filed for a divorce and sent it over to her for signing. Her parents kept on calling, as did Lily. And she kept sending me mail by morning and evening delivery in the same pink envelopes she sent app nudes too. That's when I realized she was just incredibly dumb. I found the app's phone number from the directory and called his wife to tell her about everything that happened between Lily and her husband. I don't know what she did with that piece of information. Some months later, my divorce was finalized. A few years down the line, I met a wonderful woman who I married and started a family with. I don't regret leaving my ex one bit because I would not have the life I have today had I not. Do not ever stay with a cheating spouse. You deserve better.